Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining us from. Let's get started. I see there are still people dropping in, but we'll start with introductions so that we'll get to our presenter soon. So my name is Johanna Siliakus, and I work for the Transport Sector Office at the Asian Development Bank. And I'd like to warmly welcome you to today's webinar. We have a very exciting session today on accessing green finance with Devindranauth Bissoon from GCF today with us. This webinar series is organized under the umbrella of the e-mobility support and investment platform for Asia and the Pacific. This is a platform that aims to build capacity and support the scale up of financing of e-mobility initiatives. The platform is managed by ADB and it's supported by UNEP and the Global Environment Facility, the GEF. And if you would like to join the e-mobility community that we have under the platform and receive updates of our upcoming activities, we have a survey that you can now see the QR code for. It's a needs assessment survey that we're also very thankful if you will fill in. That will give us information on what's actually useful for you in terms of activities of the platform. And in the end of that survey, you will be able to sign up for our mailing list. We'll also share the link to this survey in the chat later on. And next slide, please. Thanks. So we have a very a completely new lineup actually here presented to you on the slide. So this is our newly confirmed set of webinars for the next quarter. So we'll start in 2 weeks with this series or this next series with Mr. Kim. And we'll be looking at second life batteries or second life of batteries of EVs. And actually also regarding batteries or on this topic, we'll have next week on the 3rd of April, a panel discussion on the sustainable management of the end of life of batteries of EVs. So please do join that one as well. We'll share a link to that in the chat soon, together with the link for signing up for the next webinar by Mr. Kim. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over now to Tom Fleming from our implementing partner, Integrated Transport Planning. Tom will moderate this session. So over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna, and welcome everybody. Good to see so many people joining on the call. Just to begin, a few house rules. So microphones will remain muted unless you're invited to speak. And please do use the Q&A function, which is there if you'd like to pose any questions to our speaker today, and we'll pick them up and put them to Dev during the moderated Q&A at the end. So next slide, please. Perfect. Okay, so today's webinar will be delivered by Devindranauth Bissoon. Dev is a senior infrastructure specialist at the Green Climate Fund. He works within the Mitigation and Adaptation Division, where he plays a pivotal role in originating and structuring innovative climate change adaptation mitigation projects and supports developing countries to access climate finance and deliver transformative and impactful climate action. Dev, without further ado, I'll hand over to you. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Joanne. Good afternoon, everyone. Very pleased to be sharing with you this presentation, Climate Finance for Low-Emission Transport in Developing Countries. As you know, the GCF work with its partners and accredited entities to deploy climate finance in developing countries. So largely, I will speak on how we have been working and addressing barriers and supporting the paradigm shift for low emission transport in developing countries. So we know that the emission gap for low emission transport is growing, but it does have mitigation potential. And the transport sector has a great potential as it accounts for around 23 or thereabout percent of global emission. And transport, as we know, the demand for passenger and freight will be doubled from 2050. When we take it from 2015, it requires additional 25 million kilometers of paved lane. So largely lots of deployment of infrastructure and also rails to support that. Transport emission also, transport emission needs to drop from 8 gigatons to 2 gigaton for us to keep temperature rise below 1.5 degrees. As we know, that's the Paris Agreement ambition. And then financing gap estimated at around $2 to $3 trillion per year by 2050. So this is some information in the global perspective, just to give you more information and insight into what we do at the GCF. Low emission transport is one of 8 GCF results area, and it is largely under the reduce emission result area. So we have also other areas that we focus on, which is related. For example, infrastructure and the built environment is also related to the work we do in low emission transport. So they are complementary to that. This is our low emission portfolio in terms of transport and investment. We have to date 17 projects amounting to 1.1 billion. So you can see relative to other results area or sectors, we are about 8%. And you see we have in the various cycle of the GCF, we have had proposal being approved where 6 of those were under the 2015-2019 cycle, 10 under 2020 and 2023 cycle. And recently, under the new GCF2 phase, we have one project which was approved in March, just about a few weeks ago with the ADB. And that project, I will share some more insights regarding that project. Overall, we have 10 projects in the public sector, and we have projects also in the private sector. So both public and private sector investment projects are in low emission transport in our portfolio. I want to bring this slide to your attention that we have in this new phase, this 2024-2027 period of our work plan. We have 11 key targets that we are looking at. And when we do look at these targets, we see that in terms of its linkage to low emission transport, we have targets related to adaptation, which in some instances, low emission transport also have the resilient component. But for infrastructure, we have 45 to 60 development countries to develop or secure low emission climate resilient infrastructure. On transport, buildings and industry, we have 18 to 25 developing countries to shift towards clean and efficient energy and use. So as part of the transport investment, we are looking to work in the developing countries to ensure that this target can be met. And of course, clean energy, which the drive to implement low emission transport also help to accelerate adoption of clean energy in developing countries. How do we deploy and work with our countries? The GCF, we deploy a range of financial instruments. We work with our partners to make blended finance work for developing countries. And this is done through a range of instruments. For example, loans, guarantees, equities, and grants. And a collection or combination of these are also used together with private sector and private capital. One of the important and the key consideration in our investment is leveraging and also scaling up our investment. So we provide investment for climate impact, for example, the mitigation impact that will be derived from the investment, but also the co-financing or additional capital that is crowded into the investment will support other activities under the project or intervention that is targeted. So I will share with you some details on paradigm shifting pathways that we look at the GCF. So we adopt the ASI framework, the avoid, shift, improve framework to support low carbon transport. So as we know, we basically, if we cannot avoid and reduce the need for motorized travel, then we adopt the shift to more environmentally friendly modes, and thereafter improving energy efficiency of those modes. So in terms of the shift approach, it's shifting from private vehicles, which is usually in some countries we see there's strong adoption of private. So shifting from private to more environmentally friendly modes where we can have, for example, urban public transport systems, railways, and also promote other mobility measures such as non-motorized transport, walking and cycling. Now, with the shift in, there comes also improvement, which is improving the energy efficiency of the transport modes, for example, fuel economy or electric mobility, and also bringing in renewable energy into the energy mix that will support the charging infrastructure and other aspects of the mobility program. In terms of the pathway, pathway 1, which speaks to the accelerating the shift to low emission public transport, it goes towards integration of modern, climate smart, non-motorized transport and micro mobility solution with the public transport. So non-motorized measures, for example, the construction and implementation of walking paths, bicycle lanes, and other sort of measures that will support micro-mobility or non-motorized transport measures and ensuring safe and efficient access as well. Policies and economic nudges that accelerate the modal shift away from low-density vehicle ownership. These are all supported under this pathway, and innovation in business and financial models for creating high-efficient public transport system as the backbone for mobility. Now, the second pathway, which is rapidly electrifying transport system, electrification of the transport throughout the entire value chain. While some of these may be powered from the grid that is accounted from fossil fuel, we aim to electrify the transport system and have also in the supply value chain also renewable embedded into that. So including policy and business model innovation to catalyze systemic electrification. So vehicles, charging infrastructure, grid interface infrastructure, depot, coupled with the linkage to the renewable energy power generation. The third pathway, which is to look at alternative fuel, it's scale up of new generation zero emission fuel. So this one, I will share some barriers to that, but catalytic action to scale up innovative fuel technology that links renewable energy and new non-carbon fuel production. So we see hydrogen and second generation zero emission biofuels as potential sources for alternative fuel sources. Of course, full value chain deployment from decentralized electricity, zero emission fuel production, storage and distribution of such new generation fuel is an important consideration as well. And the policy and business model innovation in well-to-vehicle zero emission solution is required. Now, overall, in our investments, what we see in terms of general barriers to finance in these paradigm shifting pathways, we see in developing countries, there are policy risks, a lack of long-term political support, which are coupled with underdeveloped policy and regulatory framework for low-emission transport, We note also institutional risk, where there are institutional capacity lacking to plan, develop, and implement a long-term strategy in low-emission transport. Technological risk, of course, where low-emission transport system is perceived as a greater technology risk due to the limited long-term on-the-ground experience and business model. So these are in not so well-developed markets. And revenue risk also, which is user behavior and predictability of use, introduce a high degree of uncertainty on revenue stream and have direct impact on return on investment. So this is something we looked at in terms of revenue. So coming to the pathways in terms of barriers that we have to look at, accelerating the shift to low-emission public transport. Some of the key barriers that our investment aim to address are the strong culture around single occupancy vehicles. And also there is this subsidization of cars, and also investment in roads that are actually deployed through investment from public investments, but there is also limited or poor quality existing public transport infrastructure and not a wide range of options available. There is also the issue of limited understanding or experience of integrated public transport, non-motorized transport, and TOD measures in those countries. Now, in terms of the second pathway, rapid electrification of the transport system, we see there is a high dependence on energy sector, and electricity price and volatility also impact on that. There is also, we know, high upfront cost and technological shift risk, especially in countries that are now introducing, let's say, these, let's say, not well-developed public transport system. There is a huge risk associated also with investing in fleet, let's say, renewable energy fleet and more low-emission transport systems. Technology maturity and performance of the battery EVs, charging infrastructure and supply chain deficit. This is one of the main issues also we see that in developing countries, there is the issue of infrastructure deficit. Now, for new zero-emission fuel, major barriers that needs to be addressed are the infrastructure deficit. Additionally, underdeveloped supply chain, and also concerns on the competition with food supply demand for new generation fuel. So one of the things we look at is to ensure, and which is critical in assessing how to approach new zero-emission fuel sources, is to ensure that in deploying that or coming up with those new zero-emission fuel, it does not affect the food supply, as it will require and demand input from that sector as well. And there is the environmental concern of new low-emission fuel system, which is also a concern and barrier in scaling up and adopting new zero-emission fuel in developing countries. GCF, in our investment and in our approach, we look at 6 investment criteria in addition to additionality and other aspects, additionality in terms of climate additionality and how GCF financing will make the investment viable. We look at impact potential, paradigm shift potential, sustainable development potential, the needs of the recipient or those countries. And of course, strong country ownership must be demonstrated along with the efficiency and effectiveness of the investment. So to go through each of these, how countries and also entities can actually tap into green financing for low emission transport system. Largely, there is the reduced emission or the mitigation impact that is associated with low emission transport in terms of the carbon sequestration or basically avoided emission from the low emission transport systems. So the shift to low and to zero emission public transport that are seamlessly integrated with non-motorized and micromobility transport solution, including the last mile connectivity, which is part an important part of the shift as well. Electric charging infrastructure and supply chain for electrification, and also zero emission fuel technology are all part of the package that helps to contribute to reducing the emission. But notwithstanding the emission reduction that is associated largely with low emission transport, there is the resilience aspect, which is the resilience of the low emission transport system that we aim to achieve when we are deploying investment. In terms of paradigm shift, this is a critical consideration. There must be elements of scalability where there's a robust plan to scale the project or program, and a strategy or technology. A strategy should show that beyond this one-off investment, the project is actually is scalable. Sustainability benefits, of course, and to ensure that it can be sustained. The investment also will support additional climate resilient action, either nationally or regionally, for mitigation and adaptation beyond the investment that GCF is put in, and also replicability. So key structural elements of the project or program that can be replicated, whether nationally or also regionally and internationally, are all part of the paradigm shifting potential. So not only is a one-off investment, but taking it beyond that, one investment, and ensure that there is the paradigm shifting in the sector as well. For sustainable development potential, there is alignment with also SDGs, but ensuring environmental, social, and economic co-benefits that are aligned with national priorities. We know that with the deployment of low-emission transport, it helped to improve accessibility, and that is a consideration, improve universal accessibility and mobility for beneficiaries, also contribute to gender improvement, and also decrease gender inequality, improving air quality as well. In addition to these, we have potential opportunities for economic and social opportunities, job creation, poverty alleviation, and also increase incomes and GDP for the beneficiary countries. And of course, improve quality of life and increase attractiveness of city for investment. So largely, this investment, the investment in low emission transport contributes to good health and well-being, gender equality, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That's SDG 9, SDG 11, of course, which is in sustainable city and communities, their targets established here. And of course, climate action, mitigation and adaptation impacts. We see also that the recipient need is key, that the climate vulnerability and financing need of the beneficiary and the population must be taken on board. In addition to the mitigation impact, as mentioned earlier, adaptation measures can be highlighted, especially in the SIDS and LDCs. So hazards or climate scenarios that potentially can impact on low emission transport system include flooding that can potentially destroy and disrupt routes, or also extreme precipitation that results in flooding as well and could disrupt the service provided by low emission transport. So inclusion of adaptation element is also a consideration that can be taken on board, and of course, depending on the need of the country or the recipient who will be benefiting from the low emission transport. Now, one of the important aspects is country ownership, and these projects must demonstrate strong country ownership where it's aligned with the country, national and local plans, policies, and institutional structure, both for the climate and for transportation sectoral actions. In terms of alignment with those plans, we see that in countries NDC, the National Determined Contribution to the Paris Agreement, they usually speak to some of these where the mitigation targets are established, and in some instances, it clearly state that low emission transport interventions will contribute to that mitigation target as well. Country ownership also seek to address the looks at the country's capacity to implement a funded project or program, and also policies and climate strategies, and also the institutional capacity. Country ability to mitigate risk and implement project within the allocated budget and timeline are also important. So if a project is deployed to a country, is to ensure that within the time allocated, that it does not provide constraint to implementation, and that the sector is capable of accommodating and absorbing that intervention in terms of budget and also overall in the time that is allocated. Now, importantly, efficiency and effectiveness of the project. So what is the cost per ton of carbon that is avoided or reduced emission from the intervention? And we usually looked at that, and also the financial leverage. So when GCF comes in with its investment, what is the amount that is also contributed from other sources of financing into the project? So there are two things: efficiency in terms of the unit cost or the investment per unit of CO2, and also the leverage ratio, and also accessing finance. I mean, we assess the financial risk for a given country, which may include also political instability issues, market and current fluctuations, and also potential revenue to fund operation and maintenance costs. These projects are in many instances revenue generating, so this potential needs to also be assessed clearly. Now, I will present a couple of projects, and one which is in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have a project with the Inter-American Development Bank implemented in 9 Latin American and the Caribbean countries. It's a project that is funded jointly between the GCF. We come in with 200 million, and the IDB come in with another 250 million for a 6-year program that links e-mobility with sustainable urban transport system. And also it deploy resilience measures in the transport system. While it finances electric buses and electric vehicle fleets and electric boats and vessels, and support hydrogen projects, and also vehicle-to-grid project for urban mobility, it also focuses on resilience of the transport investments, and hence it is cross-cutting. And the expected mitigation outcome is 7.5 million tons of CO2 over the lifetime of the project overall in these nine countries. The program is on commercial e-mobility to support significant modal shift from moving away from private vehicles to using and adopting public transport EVs. And it will also support electric mobility framework, gender action plan, and transform urban mobility that is resilient to climate change, taking into consideration those hazards that may impact on the infrastructure investment or on the transport sector. We have also with the ADB, we have a project in Pakistan, which is the Green BRT. And this is a project financed also by the GCF with co-financing from ADB. GCF is coming in with 49 million, and it aims to establish a 30-kilometer fully segregated bus rapid transit, the BRT system, with biomethane hybrid bus fleet. And it includes innovative features such as dedicated biogas plant, which covers 100% of fuel demand, and also non-motorized interventions for last mile connectivity via bikes and e-pedicabs. And the resilience measures is also included, such as the flood-proofing of the road, the 30 kilometers that will be deployed. We have another program, which is a private sector investment with Macquarie in India, and that's a 200 million investment. Overall, from GCF, it's 200 million that also crowd in additional private investment. And it's a 10-year program, which include equity from the GCF. The recent program that I mentioned was approved in March, and this is an e-mobility program with the ADB, which will be implemented in 7 countries. This is a quite innovative project as well, as it includes financing to support adaptation intervention to make the investment more resilient. So GCF funding amounts to 169.92 million, and ADB is coming in with investment along with national co-financing from the beneficiaries. And it is cross-cutting. Expected mitigation outcome will yield 11.4 million tons of CO2 that will be reduced emission, and also adaptation is a number of beneficiaries, both direct and indirect beneficiaries from this program, which is investing in large-scale e-fleet and aim to promote transformational shift to climate resilient and low-emission urban mobility system. As we know, in some of these countries, they already have well-established public transport systems. So in this case, the project will deploy fleet. So this is in some instances deploy e-fleet, e-buses fleet with innovative models that will help to promote sustainable investments. And there are measures also, of course, to increase the climate resilience of the transport system. So adaptation, while the project is anchored on mitigation and reduction of CO2, it is also to ensure that the investment that is made is resilient to floods and other kinds of hazards that will threaten both the investment and also the disruption of the service that will be provided. So I would like to stop here. And if you have any question, please feel free to come in with your questions. Thank you so much. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you so much, Dev. That was really excellent and great to learn more about the activities of GCF, the types of investments you're making in low emission transport, and also the barriers faced and the investment criteria as well. As Dev mentioned, if you have any questions for Dev, please pose them in the Q&A, and I'll put them happily across. I have one pre-prepared, Dev, just to kick us off whilst questions from the audience come through. Can you I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on your experience with small island developing states. Excuse me. What challenges do sort of SIDS typically face, and what should be done to promote e-mobility specifically in these markets?
Yeah, thanks very much for this, Tom. So indeed, in SIDS, there is what we see is that there is a need for let's say investment in e-mobility, but as we know, there is the issue also of some of the barriers that we need to address. In SIDS, we see there's a policy challenge and also institutional risk in terms of the ability to have long-term low emission investment sustained, because in some countries they are not well developed infrastructure. So there's a huge infrastructure deficit in some of the countries we found. So not only investing in EBRT, but we have to take the whole value chain and also the gamut of infrastructure that is needed to make e-mobility work. So in some, like in developed countries or even countries that are more advanced in terms of e-mobility, they have bus routes. They have also buses, let's say, developed public transport systems. And these are where, if you come in with fleet replacement, it works well. In some of the SIDS, we see also that what we see is that even the public transport system is not so well developed. So it brings additional challenge and requires additional investment in those countries to make it work. In addition to that, in some of the SIDS, the market, private sector market, and to take it to scale is something we need to look at, and it's one of the challenges as well. Scalability of those investment in SIDS. So I want to stop here, Tom, but I hope this answer the question.
No, that's excellent. No, thanks so much, Deb. We have a question from James Reeves in the Q&A. So James asks, are you only working with established bus operators, or are you also getting involved in industry transition, investing in e-buses where there are a disparate range of informal and disorganized operators is very difficult, as sustainable investment models are difficult to find? I don't know if you've got a perspective on that one, Dev.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for that question. So largely how we work at the GCF and to deploy our finance is that we work closely with our accredited entities. So this depends on those entities and also the countries that bring forward these projects. So many of our entities who we've engaged with on e-mobility projects are MDBs, for example, ADB, IDB. We've engaged with also private sector. So it depends on the entity that is coming to us with the projects. They have to ensure that these projects, after the market sounding and market analysis, they are favorable. And of course, we work with our countries as well to ensure that it's acceptable to them. So, I mean, it has to fit within our investment criteria. It has to also generate that impact and show and demonstrate that in alignment with our investment framework, that the project can yield the impact we are looking for, because we are a climate fund. We have to get the climate impact. But in addition to that, country ownership, the paradigm shifting potential must be demonstrated as well.
Thanks, Deb. And we have a question coming from Lloyd. So reflecting on his, I think, experience collaborating with GCF before. So he suggests that with GCF there can be a heavy administrative load of processing reporting, at least in comparison to other co-financiers. Are there any efforts being made to streamline GCF procedures?
No, this is an excellent question. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Lloyd. So at GCF, we are launching an efficient, what we call efficient GCF, where we are looking to streamline exactly the process, not only streamline, but also reduce the time it takes for us to process and appraise projects. So there are efforts being made to that. Notwithstanding that, we see that despite having launched a simplified approval process, where we have the SAP window for investment, these are projects up to 25 million. We see that all of our e-mobility investment have been above that amount. So e-mobility, low emission transport investment have always been above one of the windows we have, which is a simplified approval process. And many of the projects we have are large scale and medium scale, which is above 50 million. So notwithstanding that, you are exactly, to answer your question, yes, there are measures being taken in this new period where we are going through from 2027 and beyond to ensure that we can fast track and support our countries, developing countries, and also the AEs that are seeking to access the funds in a much faster way.
Thanks, Dev. And yeah, further question come in. So adaptation is becoming such an important part of the climate change discussion, but adaptation finance has historically been seen as high risk and low return. In your experience, what types of investment work best for financing adaptation through e-mobility?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So indeed, adaptation finance, so there is usually, so one point to that is it's usually seen as mostly directed coming from the public. So in the case of e-mobility, we see that mitigation activities under low emission transport are revenue generating. So the GCF, we have a stance on that, where there are revenue generating activities, we cannot put our grants. But in the case of, let's say, resilience measures, and in many cases, adaptation interventions speak towards addressing issues of vulnerability and resilience. We also have grant financing that can support that. As in the case, or in the example of the ADB e-mobility project, it was a combination of grants and loans. And where the loans was going towards the deployment of the e-buses. And where as grant financing were used to demonstrate and pilot resilience measures to safeguard the investment and also the route and urban mobility systems and transport network. So there is various instruments. We can also support resilience measures through grant, but where there is revenue generating activity, we are very, I would say, a bit more hesitant to invest in revenue generating activities in terms of grants.
Okay, thanks, Dev. I see we have a question from Barry. Can you give examples of adaptation measures you can deploy on a typical e-mobility transport system?
Yeah, this is excellent, Tiberi. Thanks for that question. So I can give you an example that, okay, so there are cases where we invest, let's say, in an EBRT or fleet replacement, or to strengthen, let's say, public transport network, and also coupled with non-motorized transport measures. However, in, let's say, that particular city, it's prone to flooding or extreme precipitation that cause can disrupt it, potentially disrupt the transport network. In those cases, adaptation measures could include, let's say, concepts such as bioswales, bioengineering measures to protect the infrastructure, but not only that, protect it from, let's say, failure or any destruction from that hazard, but it can also include measures that can enhance infiltration, improve drainage structure, or widen those hydrological or drainage structures to ensure that the investment, it's not going to be impacted, and also that the service provided by the low emission transport is not disrupted, and people can continue to enjoy and benefit from the transport, even in the face of a disaster. So this is one example, but there are other examples as well, including the charging infrastructure, for example, that may be prone to, let's say, if it is in a vulnerable site or a site that is prone to flooding. Of course, these are all studies that will be done to ensure that it is not placed in those vulnerable areas, but measures can be taken also to protect all associated infrastructure from the hazards.
Thanks, Dev. I'm conscious time's kicking on, so I'll pose one final question, if that's okay. So it's sort of reflecting on the investment criteria, I think. Do you always need a solid business case to invest? How do you balance ethical, financial considerations, and what sort of risk level do you typically tolerate?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So our financing actually is, so in the public sector, we provide concessional terms, and we also have financing on the private sector terms as well. As mentioned earlier, adaptation financing are available, and these are in the form, some are highly concessional and also in the form of grants. However, where we see activities are revenue generating, then our grant resources cannot be deployed to that. And this is where it comes down to who is the entity that we are working with and who comes to the GCF for the financing. What type of instruments are you eligible to work with? And in instances in SITS, for example, if an entity is only eligible for grants, then it may be not possible to go forward with that project. But we have cases where we have used various instruments, equity, grants, loans, a combination of those to deploy investment in low emission transport. So the question that we seek to address in our investment framework is, what is the climate impact that we are buying from our investment? So when we invest, what is the mitigation impact, and also who benefits ultimately from the investment. So I hope this answer, and of course, the ethical question is always there. How do we ensure that countries can in fact benefit from green financing, even though they may seek, have difficulty in accessing overall, let's say, financing for the entire project. So I hope this answered your question, Tom, and thanks. That was a really good, very insightful one.
Super. No, thank you, Devin, and thanks to everybody for their questions and taking the time to join us today, and of course yourself, Dev, for an excellent presentation. I think at this point we're right on time, so we'll draw it to a close. And just to highlight that we will share the recording around after this webinar, so it'll be available for people to watch back. And we hope to see you in our next webinar, which is on the opportunities for second life batteries and battery energy storage systems and DMCs by Dr. Yutak Kim on the 10th of March, same time, same place. So thank you, everybody, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And Dev, I know you're going off on vacation now, so I hope you enjoy that too.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dev. Bye.